Hey everyone, Panyo here. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of After Dinner Mints. I highly encourage everyone watching to join us in the Art Blocks Discord. A link to our Discord can be found in the description of this video. As always, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe to our YouTube channel so you don't miss an episode of our weekly show. And now I want to introduce our guest for this afternoon. We have art collector Durtis.
Hey, Ponyo.
Hey, how's it going? Thanks so much for being here today. How are you doing?
Doing good. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Well, we have a bunch to cover. Your perspective being a collector. But yeah, why don't we kick things off and maybe you can tell us a little bit about your background.
Absolutely. Yeah. I am one of the newer community leaders for Art Blocks Discord as of, I think it was February, I think is when you brought me on, brought me
Mhm.
on the team. But I mean, I consider myself, even though it's almost been a year for me collecting, pretty new to the space. I think I got into my first piece I collected for Art Blocks was around late July, early August. So kind of the very big blow off top for the Art Blocks August rush. So it really only feels like, you know, almost like a few months instead of just even almost close to a year now. But I guess that's how the NFT space kind of works. Time really flies
Yeah,
by.
absolutely. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about kind of your art collecting past. I'm curious to know, were you an art collector prior to, NFTs?
So I currently reside in California, and one of the downfalls of living in California is basically a lack of square footage and wall space. I'm lucky enough to have a piece right now and a few pieces coming in from some artists as well. But you really have collecting art really isn't a priority when you're young and living in California and kind of the big cities. You just don't really have many places to put them, put pieces around and around your apartment or your and uh, but luckily, I mean, I consider myself someone who's always been in art space or kind of been surrounded by art. My mother was an art history major growing up, and not only that, but she was also born in Paris, France. So I was very, very lucky as a young kid to growing up in my hometown in the United States, basically be as I consider it when I was that young, dragged to every museum, art museum, modern art museum, contemporary art museum that in any city we visited. Um, and then also, when we'd go to visit her family out in Paris, France, go to the Louvre, go to Monet's house, where the water lilies are, go to Rodin's, a sculpture garden. And again, if you talk to me when I was 10, 11, 12 years old and that was going on, I would probably give you a very negative experience or just kind of I was bored or something like that. But as you go on, you get older, you kind of really appreciate those type of experiences where, your parents did, drag you and make you look at amazing art from
Yeah.
amazing artists. And then I was also on my dad's side, my grandfather was an architect. And so one of my fondest memories of him is he was obsessed with mid-century art, everything. His pretty much the inside of his house was a homage to all thing mid-century, especially Eames. He had one of those classic Eames chairs that you see kind of in every modern furniture store these days. But I think that kind of really honed in my love of kind of physical design and kind of structure. So from mom's side, kind of getting the classic artists and kind of the love of paintings and then from the father's side kind of getting love of design architecture. So I think those kind of influenced me as a young kid. And also mom would take me to art camps and what have you. Just kind of instilling that sense of creativity. So it's always been very, very present in my life, kind of appreciating art and appreciating design and kind of just always think that's always interested me. So I think kind of when this whole NFT thing kind of exploded and I I found my way to art blocks. It just kind of, that just something really clicked with it, and I just kind of fell in love immediately with the space.
That's awesome. And I'm curious to know, how did you get into the NFT crypto space? But then I'm also curious, based on, your parents taking you to museums and like the architecture background, like what do they think of, or, what does your family might think, of this crypto, wild and crazy crypto NFT space?
Yeah, for sure, for sure. So for the first part, I mean, I got into crypto at the very peak of the 2017 hype market cycle. So definitely, I think Bitcoin was like, inching up to 20,000, and Ethereum was also kind of getting into its peak pricing, and I was working, for TechMe at the time, and so definitely there was a lot of, I think, chatter amongst the engineering crew that I was kind of positioned with, and and I guess even previous before that, I did have a very distinct memory of being on Reddit and kind of just the Bitcoin subreddit kind of popping up every once in a while on the front page, because probably Bitcoin had did something crazy, like gone from like 200 to 400, or but I think what always just really stuck out in my mind was their banner, which was this very rudimentary like clip art drawing of a wizard with like a Bitcoin staff, and underneath it was just magic internet money. And that was just kind of like that was just always like my very first image and knowledge of what Bitcoin was just like this Bitcoin subreddit of this like magic internet money. That's what Bitcoin is. But back in, and so 2017, and everything's kind of exploding, and it's there, I guess it was a lot easier to just go hop on Coinbase and get an account and just start buying some little bits here and there. But it was actually coincidentally at that same time in 2017, when that big peak was going on, that the very first instance of hearing like an NFT came about, or what would be an NFT, and that was CryptoKitties. And one of my good engineering friends, this guy Major, shout out to Major, I bought one of his first NFTs that he made, I think late last year or like mid last year. But he was going on, we were talking about Ethereum, and he's like, yeah, and then there's this cool product called CryptoKitties. And I was like, what is CryptoKitties? Like, oh yeah, well, it's like images you can buy on the Ethereum blockchain, and like he's like explaining, kind of the best you can about what CryptoKitties is, what an NFT is back at that point. And I just remember being like, well, that's never going to catch on. And I guess it kind of makes me, I don't feel too much regret about like missing the boat on was it CryptoPunks or CryptoKitties, because even back then I was just like, well, I don't know what these are, I guess I'll just ignore them. And then
so it took some time for you. It took you a little bit of time, it sounds like, to kind of warm up to what NFTs were, just because of based on what you were introduced with early on.
Yeah, totally. And then even even in 2021, it definitely did take me a little bit of time to kind of, as you can see, like, as I said, as I got fully, deep dived in August. So it definitely took me, a few months, because even I remember, I was very in tune hearing about his Beeple sales in, December, and then kind of, hearing him, sprinkled early on in the beginning of 2021, January, February. And then I even remember, for some reason, like hearing about, Bored Apes, and going on, I think on their minting page, either while they're still minting, or pretty soon after they'd soon minted out. So that was maybe around like April or May. And so even that was a couple months out from August when I first got in. So, I think it was just kind of, although I did actually buy a few, I think maybe like 3 or 4 NFTs in the early beginnings of the year. And one of them was actually, that's actually a physical kind of screener for making shirts from a company called The Hundreds. And so I bought an NFT and purchased it with enough Ethereum that the NFT they sent, which was of the shirts that they made, they sent me the actual physical screen print that they used to make the shirt. So that was kind of a cool, like my first physical, one of one, like correspondent to an NFT, which was, something that now in art blocks, and when you collect an NFT piece, that's kind of something that's I always look forward to, like seeing if those are available. But you also asked what my parents think of this crazy NFT journey, and I think they're fully on board. I think my mom is very excited that I've kind of found this art kind of sphere, a little niche community that that I, seeing me excited about like what pieces I've collected, or, kind of the experiences that I've had through art blocks and through collecting NFTs. They both have several kind of storage units full of physical art that they just can't fit in their house.
Yeah.
That if they had a house big enough to to fit these, they probably would, but that would probably cost exorbitant amount of money to house this many pieces of art that they own. So I think that it's they are really interested in this kind of new technology where it's like I can just kind of pull out my phone and show them a gallery of every single art piece I've ever collected, and it's cool to kind of see what pieces they resonate with and like what they like, and kind of go over my collection and be like, oh, that's a really nice piece, or like, oh, I don't really understand that piece at all, and I don't like that one. I'm like, all right, okay. So at least there's some that hit and there's some that don't, but it's definitely a lot of fun.
It's subjective, so I totally understand.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely.
So you mentioned that July of last year in 2021, that's when you kind of picked up your first art blocks piece. I'm curious to know, how did you learn about art blocks, and then what was that first piece that you collected?
I've racked my brain so many times trying to remember how exactly I came to the art blocks Discord, and it really is it never came about. Basically, I mean, kind of what happened was I was I think for the longest time I had my eye on like a specific CryptoPunk that I really resonated with me, and kind of at that end of July there was this, I think, just crazy like punk sweep. All of a sudden, things, I think the floor jumped from like 20 to 60 or 80 within like a day or two, and so just punks were getting bought left and right. And I think I remember just like watching that punk just like disappear off the screen, like no longer be able to bot. So it kind of just sparked something in me and being like, okay, I don't want to kind of be on the sidelines anymore. This is something, if this punk getting bought kind of like elicited this response in me, then maybe it's time to just dive all in on it. And so my first kind of big purchases were actually, since I couldn't buy that one punk, I was like, okay, well, what's kind of, in this sphere, what's kind of the next thing over? And it was at that time, the Bored Apes. And so I bought, I kind of, I had enough ether where it's like I could probably buy like one punk at that time, or like a few Bored Apes. So I was like, okay, like maybe I'll just kind of dive into these Bored Apes first. So I bought some Bored Apes, and then I was like, okay, I guess I have to go on this thing called Discord. And up to that point, I think I'd created a Discord account a few years ago just for the sake of it, never even touched it. So going to Discord for the first time, and kind of, I feel like that's, not only is like buying your first NFT, but kind of joining the NFT community for said NFT is kind of the first like stepping through the looking glass moment, where just kind of like you enter into the world and like fully immerse yourself. And I just remember, going to the Discord and being like, okay, like there's a lot of stuff going on, but there's just kind of like sales, and it's kind of like sales of like one thing. And just, after being there, for a little bit, I kind of guess I just wanted to see what else was out there. And I know that I went directly from like the Bored Ape Discord, and then I don't know like what was in between, but somehow I ended up in the Art Blocks Discord, and going and just stepping into Art Blocks Discord. I think I remember I went to general and being like, okay, like there's a few people posting here and there, and then you like click down, and then you get to Block Talk, and then it's just like an explosion of just like, okay, wow, this is apparently is the place to be. And like there's there's a sales bot going, like just that's populating all these like different pieces, as opposed to like the same kind of monkey photos, and then like there's some guy that's saying like goal, and then there's like this guy named Deepak who's like super nice and polite, helping everybody, and like it was just like such an like just a wealth of information and sites and like images that it took a while to take in. But I think, I don't know, it's just like it's hard to explain how much like it just kind of clicked, and you're like, okay, like I like what I'm seeing. I kind of like with like what I'm reading and like the community, and then simultaneously you're kind of learning what generative art is, and that that only fuels like the kind of like the passion for like staying in the Discord and like looking at the pieces. And so I think it was it's pretty crazy. I think just like coming to like the right spot at the right time just makes you just fully deep dive into art blocks, into a certain kind of space in this NFT community. But very, very thankful for just kind of just being like, all right, well, let's go.
We're super grateful to have you on the Discord. And I mean, you're just a positive person in the community. You're really helpful to others, and I just want to highlight that. We're really glad to have you on board as a community leader in the Art Blocks Discord. So just wanted to highlight that before I forget. But I want to know, like, a lot of people have asked, and then a lot of people are curious, I think, when they come to Art Blocks or just trying to collect art for the first time, like, how do individuals go about collecting? And, I leave that to you. I'm just curious, how do you go about collecting? Is it more aesthetics, or is it more, getting to understand the artist and their background, or how does that look for you?
I mean, I honestly think just probably in the past, maybe since in the beginning of this year, 2022, and maybe even like as early as like late January, February, I think I've felt like I've just like started to like come into my stride as a collector. I think there was a time in the very beginning where you're just kind of like trying to just kind of understand the space, and like you're buying is, there's new, well, especially since it's August, and like there's, the hype level of art blocks is so high that you're just kind of, anything that releases, you kind of want to like collect and purchase. And I think, there was those few months of just kind of like, oh my God, what is this space? It's amazing. There's so much cool art. Like, I just want to like buy as much as possible. And then, we had the high highs, and we had like the low lows of December, and like everything's like kind of calms down. And I think like those low times were kind of great, because you kind of get to like sit with the pieces you bought and kind of understand, okay, oh, like why, maybe like look into like, oh, why did these pieces like reach out to me? Was it, or like, why did, why did like this one artist, why did I kind of maybe buy a few more of these pieces of artwork of this project than maybe like say like the previous one, or like the one that's coming up. And so I think, and I gotta also thank probably like, D Bachman for a lot of, I think, influence, and kind of how I've collected in the past few months, and kind of, looked at what kind of pieces to procure, kind of come from, his the way he set up his gallery, the way he kind of like showcases his artwork. And I think he's, not only great, one of the best, members of community leaders, but I think he kind of really has changed the game in terms of how, at least and how I think if a lot of people kind of like viewed collecting art pieces and kind of setting up these galleries, especially if they've kind of blown up in the past, this past month as well with Deca. But I think, I think more and more, I really like to kind of look at my collection as a whole and kind of see where a piece like might fit into it these days. And I've definitely, there's a couple projects where I've collected a lot of the pieces, and so maybe like kind of how if I want to collect another piece of artwork from this collection that I have a few, like more than like 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Where does that piece fit into like the collection, the pieces that I have collected for that, the larger work, or if it's kind of a singular piece, maybe it pairs not really well with something else in my collection as well, and like maybe I can see it where it's going to fit in my gallery. So I think that's kind of cool, where these the attention to building galleries of your collection kind of come into play. Is like now you can kind of like, it's like a puzzle piece. You can kind of see like, okay, well, maybe this one looks really good. as a triptych, or maybe like this one would look good surrounded by these other pieces. So I think that's kind of where I'm at now as a collector, just kind of, how does something fit as a whole, or how does a piece like fit into the whole of the collection, rather than just kind of being like, uh, focusing on one thing just because it I would want it.
Yeah, definitely. Well, it sounds like, the way you collect has evolved over time, which I think it has for a lot of people. It's like they collect one way where maybe like they just want to collect things, and then after a while, maybe they have that deeper appreciation. You mentioned, December, and then that being a time of reflection. So I think that's always just really good to point out that, sometimes these pieces take a little bit of time to actually resonate with someone, and so I think that's great. And maybe we can just jump right into your gallery, your Deca Gallery, and
Yeah,
you can take
absolutely.
us through some of your pieces and why you collected them.
Absolutely. Yeah. Oh man. This is, I definitely give a shout out to Han, Bonafide Han, for creating Deca, and like kind of, just amassing this cool tool that allows us collectors to build this stuff. It's been a lot of fun. I think when you asked me to do this after the minutes, I was like, all right, I'm gonna have to, finally create a gallery for it. And I think that was the past like month I've been doing this, and it's been a lot of fun. But definitely like the first thing I wanted to highlight was, and this was, so you asked me before, I don't think I got to go to it, but my first piece that I ever minted was a Rinascita by Stefano. And then but close, pretty much, I think the very next project I minted was Mitchell F. Chan's Lewitt generator. And I'm pretty sure I've kind of confirmed this, but I'm actually the only one to have a full set of this project. So every single palette that he made for this, and that was kind of my very first instance of like having that strong, like, oh my god, like I want to, I
Gotta have it,
like
kind
there's
of.
I gotta have it. And like, yeah, like I think this piece, or this is IKB, like this palette right here, this is like the rarest palette. And like I was like, oh man, like it's super rare, like I want to have it. And it's like, well, okay, like no, I kind of like, then that kind of like, well, if I get this one, then I should get every single other one. And so I think that was like it's the first and only time I've ever done this. And I think I feel very fortunate that I was able to do it like with Mitchell, because he's just an amazing, not only an amazing, artist, and voice for the generative art space, but also just one of those amazingly just nice, humble human beings. And meeting him in person and kind of getting to tell him, it's like, hey, like I've got, I was able to collect like every single Lewitt generator, and just kind of getting his reaction and getting to talk about it and just getting to gush over the project was a lot of fun. And so I think I love to kind of put this just kind of front and center, because it has like a bit of, historic value for me as a collector, just as somebody who, kind of my first instance getting into art blocks, but also just because it's, it's kind of cool. It's like there's nine palettes. It makes a nice little square of Lewitts, and
nice little grid.
It's cool. Nice little grid. It's a nice little grid. So it's kind of front and center. And then yeah, and then kind of going down, this is just kind of just a little, some triptychs, and below this some diptychs. And so this first kind of triptych I have here is Neophytes by Sterling Crispin, and it's just kind of one of those. I think why I was absolutely drawn to these pieces was because he kind of explained that this color palette was influenced by the Chromie Squiggle. So I think the palette is chrome, and it's such a cool project, and I don't have the Deca Gallery set to live view because it would probably break my poor little laptop. But I really do love just like putting like think a lot of us kind of love putting our pieces of art, especially in live view, if they have movement to them out in the background. Or maybe we're kind of like working on something or like doing something, not on our computer. But I do love having these pieces, especially out in the background going live. But yeah, then we got some cells, like black and white cells. I think these are also very, very early purchases. And I have a really cool story about one of these. I had 4 originally, but I remember meeting D. Bachman in person at the very first Marfa Invitational that was thrown in. Was that October or
October? Yeah,
September?
October last year.
That was October. Yeah, and so then I think that's when I think D. Bachman, very prominent black and white collector, as we all know. And I think I remember promising him, I was like, oh yeah, like, I've got a lot of black and white cells, so I'll definitely send you one over at some time. And I think it eventually like slipped my mind, but was able to remember at one point, like, right, okay, D. Bachman, black and white cell, let me send this over to him. And so I sent one over to him, and then he actually simultaneously sent me another NFT back that's in this gallery that I'll when it comes to, I'll go ahead and point it out, but so I'll save that for a little bit later.
Nice.
But yeah, then so some Scribble Boundaries, some Ethereos, and so these are actually the Renacetas weren't the ones I had originally minted, but I think this is also my first attempt at kind of color pairing early on in like the August days, and saying, and just kind of, and I think it's Renacetas are such an amazing project because not only are the the background colors just so wide and variety, like such a wide variety, and just so powerful, but also the the 2 types of designs kind of lend itself to creating some really cool either diptych or triptych pairings as well. But it's definitely, I love seeing those pieces get bought up and sold, and kind of whenever they pop up in the Art Blocks feed, it's always fun to see. It's just such a fun project.
Yeah, it's a great one to see live, that's for sure.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, and we got some moments. Another like good. Just I think this part of the gallery is definitely a little just kind of focused on its kind of one-to-one pairing, especially with like this little diptych section. Matto Enzo's. Yeah, I mean, you talked about backgrounds of artists, and I think just kind of one of the it really is such a cool space that we come into, is just kind of getting to meet the artist behind it, especially for obviously these 2, so Matto and then Aaron Penne, these 2 apparitions. I think Aaron was actually the very first artist I met in person, and I think we'll talk later on about some IRL events, but that was kind of my first instance of meeting an artist, generative artist, whose work I appreciated and kind of in person. And I was lucky to meet Matto at, I believe it was first at Marfa, and then we really got to talk more at NFT NYC last year. And it's just, it's really fun to kind of, be a fan of piece of work and collect it, and then, meet the artist and just kind of and just kind of like be really excited about their art, and kind of see the artist in turn get excited from you being excited about appreciating something that they've created and like put out in the world. So, and it's kind of a cool space that we get to do all this. Definitely.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then some more Aaron Penne work with and without. It just his Aaron's ability with palettes is just amazing. And then it's my another first collection from another artist I really love, Jason Ting, transitions with Matt Bilfeld. Yeah, and a lot of that stuff with like, especially these were very, the very first, you can kind of see the August influences in there, transitions, flowers, Lewitt generator, just kind of very early works that kind of I first collected. And it's fun to, it was a lot of fun creating this gallery, just kind of, and especially doing the very beginning August works, because again, I feel like back in those early months and weeks, just had like no idea what I was doing. But you kind of look back like, all right, I made some like pretty cool purchases. I picked up some cool art in those first few weeks, because everything felt like it was just, everything was flying, and you're just like, you didn't really know what you were purchasing, and you just kind of like, oh, that looks really cool, I'll just like pick that up. And then you learn like who the artist is and like what the project is, like what went into creating it, and like you get a bit more appreciation for it. But yeah, I look back on August Durtis and his foresight and collecting some stuff, and I have to like give him some thumbs up.
Gotta show some appreciation to early Durtis.
Yeah, absolutely. And then I think Pigment's also another kind of early in those era purchases. But
so good, yeah.
Yeah, just always something, always just really fun to look at. And then going kind of real quick, these are two streamliners, please, from Plottables. So I don't know, I think that there's a few, we're a small but very happy group of people at the Plottables Discord, who have really come to love the aspect of physically printing your own art, from your own generative art. And so Numbers in Motion has done an amazing job, and this is kind of the Genesis project, Streamliners. And this one on the left is not only just one of my favorite streamline pieces, but just kind of one of my favorite generative art pieces that I have of all time. It's, I don't know, just kind of the way that moves and the hills, and just, I don't know, I think everyone has some pieces that they really love to look at and just are really proud to have in their collection, and this is definitely one of them.
Absolutely. And have you plotted those yet, or is that something you plan on doing at some point?
Something I plan on doing. Artblocks was very nice and kind and fortunate to send us some amazing Axie draws, and I really appreciate that. And it's again, living in a small California apartment, the ability to set up dedicated space to an Axie draw is few and far between. But it's definitely it's on the radar to get that set up and going, and I think I'll be sending you and the team some of my first pieces to plot out for sure.
Sweet. Yeah, I'll have to check that out for sure.
Yeah, and again, like I said, here's some, just I think it always, I think with a lot of collectors, you're kind of drawn to certain colors and palettes, and that kind of like really resonate with you. And I think, with these Stratas, it's there's certain colors you just very rarely see, or just just so well utilized. I think orange is just kind of one of those. I don't really know too many like very, very orange pieces that I've ever kind of really just kind of like fallen for. And so it was really cool to just kind of see these two, or like this color palette used in this project, and just be like, wow, this is just so orange. I love it. And I think that kind of happens every once in a while, where you just kind of, something you come across just really, hits right. And you're just like, okay, I gotta collect these pieces. Like this color works. Like this is something I really want to, I can envision seeing in my collection. So it's
yeah, it kind of depends on the project. Sometimes you're like, hey, this project just does a really good job, highlighting this orange palette. Like I want to collect it.
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. And then here's, I think this is one of my more, we were talking about kind of, projects where I've collected a wide variety of these, a large quantity of these pieces. And this is kind of the first one. These replacements from Cooper Jamerson. And I think we had a really really cool interaction with a piece that's later on in my collection. But it was just kind of, I had minted a few placements, and I remember going on the Art Blocks kind of page for it, and this one piece just absolutely stood out, and I just knew it would immediately pair so well with another piece. And I have that highlighted here later on in the gallery. But I actually reached out to Cooper, and I was just like, hey, no, sorry. And so the piece ended up being looked up who the owner was, and turned turns out it was Cooper himself. And so, kind of was just very like, wow, like it's in his own collection, like he minted it. Like man, I don't know if this is okay, but maybe I can see if he'll, part with this piece if I show him like what I'm envisioning, like pairing this piece with. And so I showed him like the piece I wanted to pair it with, and I was like very polite. I was like, hey, like I know this is probably like, not doesn't happen very often, but would you ever consider, parting with this piece? I'd love to purchase it from you, and like here's what I'm envisioning, and like here's what I'd love to pair it with. And kind of means like, wow, I totally get it. Like that's really, really cool. Yeah, I think we can work something out. So and just kind of that interaction with him, and like collecting his previous pieces, like, I kind of deep dive even more placements, and like yeah, just fell like more and more in love with the project. And so and luckily it was like still very open at that point. So you can like, every once in a while you have some, some spare ETH, or like, you start minting a few more, and then, you start building your collection just off those mints, and you kind of see like, how things kind of come together, and how certain pieces like, work out together just off what you minted. And then you kind of look at what's being on the open marketplace, and you kind of see where certain other mints, other pieces kind of fit in with your mints. And so it kind of just kind of like steamrolls and builds, and you're maybe like, your small collection becomes kind of a mid-sized collection, becomes like a very large collection of a certain project.
Yeah, you have so many really nice placements. I mean, I remember just seeing those slowly mint over time, which I think was really cool. But just to kind of see your collection amass, just seeing it in the gallery right here is really cool, because you really, organize them really nicely. Which one was the one that Cooper sent you out of the? Is it on there?
Well,
or?
It's on there. It's later in the collection. I'll save it, because it's probably one of my favorite pairings. And I think it really, like, when I paired the two pieces that I did, this placement and the other, like what happened, and like it kind of like got the ball rolling for like pairing other, like kind of like pairing two or three different pieces from the projects. And it kind of like ignited that kind of creative vision for collecting as well. So it's be there. There's I forgot to kind of mention, there's kind of not like a bit of a cutoff in this gallery, where it's like the first like 2/3 are just kind of pairing like same pieces from the same project, and then like there's a kind of a delineation where I kind of do the pairings of other pieces. So I see similar pieces from different projects together. But and then then there's this was another, like, this Ode to Roy was just another example of just kind of a piece that just kind of, I don't know, you fall in love with, and you don't really care about the price. You're just like, my God, this piece just, I've never seen anything like it in any of the collections, and I just want to have it. And I don't know, I think I personally nicknamed this piece like A River Runs Through It, because it just gives me that vibe of
it's a great title.
Yeah, just like a watery piece, a water feature running through like a mountain, or a mountainside. So it's cool. Yeah, I think that was also another really, and it's a Roy. You want to absolutely. I think it's one of those collections in the Art Blocks Discord and the community where you just kind of, it has this its own legend to it within the community. It's such a it's just a fun piece to own, and not only just aesthetically, but just because when a Roy comes up, we all put the Roy emojis on it, and everyone gets excited just because it's a Roy.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like an earlier project, so I think that's really cool.
Exactly.
To kind of keep an eye on time. Yeah, maybe we can hit through a couple of more of these, and then I would love to see the one that D. Bachman gifted you, but then also the placement from Cooper. I definitely don't want to miss those two for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah, let's do it. I think other one real quick I'll highlight is just this automatism, and this is probably one of my favorite pieces, just because this is where my my profile picture comes from, this hidden face. Man. And
such a beautiful set.
Thank you so much. Let's see. All right. Yes. And another one, well, yeah, and then spotlights are another just personal favorite, just because another series I own a lot of, that you can just do so much. God, you can just do so much pairing and collecting, and I think it's one of those pieces, those projects that I love to have everything of.
Yeah. And plus, you want to see those rendered live also, which I think is just such a beautiful. I'd say that like is one of my favorite projects to see rendered live, because it's such a slow process, but you kind of see it, build up over time. That's a great one right there.
To me, it's such a good project to show people who like what a generative art is, because you can look at the still image and be like, this is a beautiful image in and of itself, and then you open it and you render it live and you can see it. Yeah, you see it render live with those photons, and you kind of like, you're able to kind of like get that like light bulb moment for some people who are like, oh wow, this is very different from like what it was originally. You're like, yeah, this is generative art.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, then so the Squiggle collection, and then this is kind of the line for where we get to where we get to kind of like the different pairings for kind of different projects that kind of give me was able to just kind of look at certain ones and just see how they in my mind, it's like, oh, these pair, I see something in these pairings right here. So
between different projects though, right? It looks like
between different projects, so we've got color studies and a Gen 2, or sorry, yeah, a Gen 3, and then what is it? Sorry, prismatic as well. And so yeah, these just kind of, this is the
you
kind
did
of
really
the
good
section
job.
where thank you. It's something that it's something, again, like something that I felt more comfortable just in the past probably a few months, where you kind of look at your collection, you're just kind of like, wow, like I've collected all these cool pieces that something spoke to me about them, and all of a sudden you're looking at your collection as a whole and being like, well, this one looks really, this one looks pretty cool together, and this one kind of looks, these three look pretty cool, or these two, and like, and I think like this one, this set right here was, I collected this anti-cyclone, and then I collected this edifice because I collected that I knew these two would pair very well. And then I was kind of looking at my my memories, and it was just kind of like, well, that's I always thought this looked like a water feature as well. And so this these kind of three together were just very like, give me a water vibe. So I thought they just kind of perfect, all three of them in a triptych. So I think that's
absolutely.
You kind of have two together, and then all of a sudden you look and you have a third piece that looks really, really cool as well. And then I realized I guess I've been through building this gallery. I think I believe I've ascertained that I have an affinity for blue. Kind of like the next like few are very blue, and so we got to, well, we were previously talking about the placement and the other piece, and so this is actually this is the pairing that I kind of started a lot of internal pairings in my collection. It was this return and this placement, and this return had been on my radar for a very, very long time, and I think it had been bought up by pretty intense collector, and then put for sale, and then kind of the price reduced to something I could afford. So immediately, once it came on the market, I immediately had to scoop it up, and then I just remember being on the again, like I said, on the placements page, and just seeing this one placement, being like, my God, this just works so perfectly with this return. I really would love to have it in my collection, and so again, thank you, Cooper, for helping me procure this and adding it to such what I consider like one of my, one of the two favorite pieces in my collection, and probably one of the best like pairings I have as well.
Yeah, that's such a good pairing. I'm glad you're able to make that happen also. I mean, I know it can be sometimes intimidating to just talk to an artist, but I feel like it's so easy in the space that we're a part of, because they're just active in the Discord, and you can just have like a casual conversation with a bunch of other people. So I'm glad you're able to do that.
Yeah, it really is. I think that's, again, one of the kind of the blessings of this, one of the cool things about this whole space, is just being able to reach out and just talk to an artist or talk to a community member and just kind of have a conversation and like either telling them you're a big fan of your work and just or just like talking about generative art or just life. I've had a lot of cool conversations just because of who I've met in the Art Blocks Discord.
I love that. And then you said you had the D Bachman piece that you're able to share with us as well.
Yes. So I sent D Bachman that that sells and then as kind of as an early birthday present, he sent me this the 70s pop to a fun time bonus pack. And the cool thing about this piece is that the palette is named New Orleans, and that's actually where I'm from originally. And so I just remember kind of discovering this project and this palette at some point, and just I think a lot of the collectors who have this palette are very prominent collectors and have them pretty much locked up. So it was looking like I would have never been able to procure one myself. And so I think either, I think me and D Bachman were talking about it. He's a huge fan of Rev Dan Cat, and I think I had mentioned that, man, like I would love to have a New Orleans palette, but I don't, just don't think I'm going to get one. And then just through the niceness that is, D Bach, me sending him, that sales piece and not expecting anything in return, and then him just kind of surprising me with this this amazing piece that I'll cherish forever and have forever. I think it, it's something that's just a really cool thing and a really cool part of being, meeting someone that cool and that kind to kind of just give you a piece that you really, admired and wanted. And I don't know.
Very meaningful, very meaningful piece for you. I mean, it just sounds like, that's, like you said, that's something you'll kind of cherish forever. It's got a story behind it. It was gifted to you,
absolutely.
And it has like that palette that, resonates with like, your past, which I think is really cool.
Absolutely.
So I appreciate you sharing all that.
Yeah.
Well, I'd love to talk a little bit about, some of the just like IRL events, if we can, just because I know that's something that's you found truly important, something that's, I think a lot of us have kind of missed with COVID, but like maybe you can tell us a little bit about like some of the IRL events you've been to, and then, some of the meaning behind those events and why they're so impactful for you.
Yeah. I mean, I think of pretty much since August, September, I've kind of tried to attend at least every Art Blocks event, but also there's been a few more outside the Art Blocks sphere. But I mean, I think the kind of the first that come to mind was my very first IRL event, which was the Rituals Mint that was hosted by Bright Moments in Venice. And that was Aaron Penney and Beretta coming together to collaborate on their project. And that was just kind of very special just because it was, the very first time I'm meeting anybody ever in real life to talk, not only to, for an Art Blocks event, or sorry, not only for, to mint my very first like IRL mint, but also just to meet other collectors and meet the artists. So I think that just holds like a very special place, just because, because it was just so new and exciting, and I had only been in the kind of the generative art spaces for a month or two at that time. So kind of like going out of my way and driving like 7 hours to go to Venice to mint this random piece, and hopefully you're hoping that it'll be a positive experience, and it ended up being one of the best, and Aaron is such an amazing and talented and creative artist, but also a great human being, and equally is said for Beretta as well. But yeah, and I met some really, I met Philbert for the first time as well, and Rosenbaum, and like those are two extremely good friends here in the space months and months later. And then kind of on the other spectrum of that was the very first Art Block event, which was Marfa. I it's funny kind of as the more we get closer to like the next Marfa event, you kind of there's this kind of camaraderie amongst people who went there. It's we always ask, oh, did you go to Marfa? It's kind of everyone, because there was so many people there, it was hard to meet everybody, but you kind of, anytime you come to space or come to a crowd, it's like, oh, were you at the Art Blocks Marfa, the first one this past year? And like someone says no, pretty much immediately after, the next thing you say is like, well, you gotta go, like you gotta it was so much fun, you gotta go this year. So I think everybody who didn't go this past year is really like looking forward to go this year because of just how excited and how positive the experience was for everybody who went. And that was the first time meeting not only like the core staff, like you and Snowfro and Hugh and Druid, all the team, but also some of my favorite artists, Generative Artworks and Jorge and then all the community leaders and all the community members, LJ and Newbie. And so all these people who this is the first time where we're all kind of like taking the veil off our screen names and seeing each other, in real life and coming together just to kind of celebrate this weird, fun world we were in. It was just insanely positive. And then, going on the big scale with the Miami Art Basel event y'all did was also just kind of, it kind of like took what we did, like we saw in Marfa, which is kind of like a small, intimate kind of gallery showing, and then just kind of the complete opposite, where it was just this, big, grandiose thing, but still felt very comfortable. I think that's, when people ask, people outside the NFT art space or NFT and general art space kind of ask me, what's, is this kind of a viable, like, do you see it kind of going mainstream? I just kind of, point and show them photos of like the gallery we had in Miami, and just, they're as kind of blown back as I was, just even looking at photos, like how well it was put together, and kind of just, give shout out to Sophia and her team for, doing something, just as mind blowing and cool as that gallery space. And then kind of and one of the most recent and like also probably one another equally as fun IRL event was the NFT Art Berlin, which was hosted by another Bright Moments event. And so that was the most recent one that I'm coming off of, and probably the most memorable. Just spending a couple weeks in Berlin, just experiencing all the love for generative art in kind of a new and inventive way in Berlin, with people who, in a city who had really never had much experience with NFTs or the space, and Bright Moments kind of putting together something that I wouldn't have imagined happening, a few months ago, let alone at the beginning of August or beginning of August last year. Just absolutely blown away just how well that event was put together, and how cool having him Craftwork was, and hang out with the artists, hang out with Jeff Davis and MP Cause and Jason Ting and Casey Rios, like all throughout the week, and getting to see their pieces of art just on a, whatever, how big that screen was, 30 feet or so, paired with electronic DJs going to like 2 a.m, and just kind of, every night just being like, well, this is pretty special. Like, this is pretty cool. And like, if we're doing this now, I can only imagine like, what we're going to be able to see and do like a year later, 2 years later, 5 years later. So, it just
the technology.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I was just gonna say the technology, I feel like it's just gotten so much better even in the past, few months. And like you said, I think in a couple of years, we'll just see some of the craziest, most customizable, and just hopefully affordable screens, in due time. I think that'll just happen, it's as the technology kind of catches up to the art that's being created. But it's cool. I'm curious to know, do you have any, tips for collectors who are new to the space that are maybe, looking to collect something for the first time, maybe on Art Blocks or just like another platform?
Yeah. I mean, I think it can't be understood enough. Like, what kind of tips you like, just kind of collecting initially, or just kind of like safety wise?
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, I guess it could be both. Maybe it could be also just kind of like safeguarding your NFTs also, because I think that's just something that's been kind of an issue just over the last several months, which I think will improve over time. But yeah, just for anyone that's new to the space.
I mean, new to the space, obviously, like, I think get a MetaMask. I have so many friends who like, know to do like, no, old college friends from living in my city, and want to get into space and like want to get into NFTs, like the very first thing is just, well, you know, get a MetaMask. And I think that's probably gonna be like my de facto gift for a lot of people, like going forward. Is just you know, get a MetaMask, get that set up, because that also, or sorry, not a MetaMask, a ledger with a MetaMask. Ledger, a ledger just, it just helps you, it just gives you that immediate, like, you know, kind of you know, security of you know, making sure you're safeguarding and you're not signing things you know, if you're signing things on just your MetaMask, that's fine. But if you're signing things with like your MetaMask that's touch your ledger, like I try to avoid that as much as possible. Like if I'm going to sign a contract that I, you know, it might be doing some others like DeFi stuff or trading or swapping, I try to do that on a dedicated MetaMask that isn't attached to my ledger. I try to sign as little with my ledger as possible that houses all my NFTs, all my gen art, and pretty much anything else on. It just makes it a lot more peace of mind, just kind of making sure that there's kind of a separation between, like, you know, my hot wallet that's kind of signing transactions that I can revoke as much as I want, and something that's kind of off to the side that I have to make a dedicated conscious decision to like log into and like interact with. And usually what I'm just doing then is just like swapping things here and out, but never really signing anything that's attached to my ledger. Which is, I think that's just the biggest thing. I think that's kind of the push forward to just kind of getting people more accustomed to, you know, what is a hard wallet, like what is a, you know, hot wallet, and, you know, just there's some education there, but I think it's kind of good for us to, in the NFT space, to kind of like do that for our friends. And yeah, I mean, I bought my dad helped him get a ledger and get him set up, and I think he's ready to get his first art blocks purchase relatively soon. So
oh, that's awesome, man. No, that's gonna be exciting. You'll have to let me know at least. I'm curious to know just what he's gonna purchase. And I think he's probably gonna catch the bug, you know, who knows. Like go down a rabbit hole and start looking back at some old projects.
I know. I'm about to be like, look, you want to make sure you don't spend all your Ethereum. All right, let's set a few projects up for you.
Let's dial it back, Dad. All right, you're going a little too hard right now. No, this has all been great. Like, I'm curious to know also, just outside of, you know, the art blocks collecting NFT space, like, what do you do for fun to kind of just, because I feel like, you know, obviously with the NFT crypto space, Discord especially, it can just be overwhelming at times, you know, just kind of a lot coming at once, especially looking at the feed sometimes, just a little bit overwhelming. But like, what do you do outside of the space? Collecting art.
It's hard to, it's like, wow, outside of art block, outside of Discord, what's that? No, I think for me, and even before I got into NFTs and kind of a creative through line for me for years and years has been photography. And I was always kind of that kid or that friend, especially like, you know, in the early Facebook days where you could just like throw up 30 photos on an album. I was always carrying a, you know, digital camera with me around everywhere. That's always been my, you know, kind of my creative outlet. And then during the pandemic, I was able to, luckily enough to get a kind of my dream film camera. And so that kind of, you know, with any kind of creative, you know, passion and love, it's kind of fun to kind of like, you know, you might get, you know, stuck on one certain path, and it's kind of fun to kind of like switch gears up and kind of like find a new love within that same passion. And so that's kind of what like film photography for me has been. All of a sudden, you know, you're kind of forced to like slow down and kind of take in more of the physical approach of taking a photo, where you're changing the film and you're actually having to, you don't have an autofocus. You have to manually focus these things. And it just really kind of, you know, especially during the craziness, the pandemic just kind of helped me like fall back in love with photography again. So I really appreciated like finding that love and of film, which, you know, probably when I first started, that's what I was doing too. In you know, high school as a film photography class, so you just kind of like come back around to it. So that's always really, really fun. But I think it's also important to like really incorporate, you know, physical activity, especially like to get yourself out of the Discord hole. And so something recently I did was kind of, I know, so I live in the Bay Area, and so it's full of people who love cycling. It took me definitely a few years, but I finally got my first road bike here in the city, and it's amazing. Like it's sort of a lot of fun, just kind of bike to where I live and in San Francisco, and go, ride all across the Embarcadero to Golden Gate, and and be in nature and be outside and kind of push yourself physically to go a little faster this time, or maybe if you're not, just slow it down and just enjoy a good ride. So I think that's one of my older loves, and now one of my newer loves, photography and cycling. So it's
cool. I appreciate you sharing that.
It's cool. Yeah, thank you.
Awesome. And then how can people reach you? Should they have any questions, or social media, or Discord?
Yeah.
How can people reach out to you?
If you're in the Artblocks Discord, I'm at Durtis. There are a lot of the hours of the day. And then if you want to find me on Twitter, I'm Durtis at Durtis_ETH. So I try to get there as often and on the crypto Twitter, NFT Twitter as well. So you can reach out to me there. Yeah, those are the two best places.
Awesome. Well, Durtis, thank you so much for walking us through your gallery. I feel like we could talk probably for hours just to kind of go through everything. But hopefully I'll see you in New York, and then also in Marfa later on this year. I think there's just a lot of really good IRL opportunities for us to hang out with you and then other people in the community. So I'm really excited to hang out later this year.
Looking forward to all the events coming up and more next year as well.
Absolutely. Well, so I got a couple news and notes on next week's After Dinnerment's show, which will be released on July the 6th. We have generative artist Jess Hewitt. Finally, we have a newsletter that gets delivered once a week with information on upcoming drops and generative art related news. You can find a link to the newsletter in the description of this YouTube video. I want to thank Durtis again for joining me on After Dinnerments. Really appreciate just hearing your perspective on collecting and also just going through your gallery. I really appreciate all that. For everyone that's tuning in, absolutely. For everyone that's tuning in, make sure you comment, like, and subscribe to the YouTube channel so you don't miss an episode of our show. Be kind to each other, and we will see you all next week. Thanks, Durtis. Appreciate you.
Bye.